Okay. Let's start on Kuf Testament days. We did the Tanur Rabbanan. Parisha Gezel Kayin. See that? We were up to Vahaksiya Vishas Kadashav Layu. It's 5, 10, about 17, 18 lines from the bottom. Yeah, we were discussing here if someone steals from a convert, so he has to give the stolen item to the kohenim if the convert dies without any relative. He has to give the stolen item to the kohenim. Let's say he himself was a kohen, so there could have been a svara logic that he should be able to keep it for himself. He gave like if other things that he's not allowed to take if it was given to someone else. But once it's brought, then he gets a portion of it. So over here, where he does get a portion of it and it's given to him, for sure he should have a portion of it, which means he should keep it. We said no, it doesn't work like that. And the reason why it doesn't work like that is because over here, everyone else gets a portion of the Gezel Ager, so you don't keep the whole thing for yourself. That's what we said. Rather, if a kohen stole, I don't know where it is. I didn't bring any gemaras. Take a Baba Kamma over here. So the Gemara now has a question.
My brother-in-law.
Oh wow, very nice. Welcome. Welcome. Very nice.
Oh, you speaking Italian?
Sí, bueno, el inglés más o menos. Thank you, sir. Gracias. ¿Habla español?
Sí, sí.
Ah, ¿verdad que sí? Sí. ¿Es cubano? Oye, bueno, yo te vi aquel día, que creo que te vi los otros días. El día que estábamos aquí.
I can't. I don't know any Spanish. Some Spanish speakers there. I can't. Okay. So the Gemara now has a question. Why do you say that if someone steals, the Kohen steals, and he steals from a convert, that he has to give he has to take it out of his possession and give it to the other Kohenim, because that's the way you repay the convert if the convert passed away. He says, why do we say that? We have a pasuk that when a person brings a sacrifice, he keeps everything from that sacrifice. And since the sacrifice, who's going to bring the sacrifice over here? The person that stole brings the sacrifice, right? So, and he's a kohen, so he should keep it. Now we mentioned before that you have to give it to the same person that gets, or the same, at least the group, the mishmar, the group that gets the sacrifice is also the group that gets the items that were stolen. So why do we say that we take it out of him and give it to someone else? It should really, if he's bringing the sacrifice, he should also keep the stolen item. Gemara says, very interesting. The Gemara says that when dealing with a certain kohen, that he doesn't actually bring the sacrifice because he's tamei. It's this big problem here. If he's tamei, then why does he even get from the Gezel Ager? Oh, you're looking for the place? Yeah. Sorry. He's tamei, you shouldn't even get from the Gezel Ager. 109. Yeah.
Thank you, Roy.
109. Okay. The Gemara says, okay. So Ella, rather, Asya l'kayin kayin misteachus. So we're going to learn from somewhere else. We're going to learn from somewhere else. And what the point is that the kohen that steals, does not end up keeping it. That's going to be our source. It goes like this. We learn from Sdei Achuza. This is an inherited field that a person decided to consecrate. And what happens is it goes to goes to the Kayanim, goes to the Beis Hamikdash. The Gizbar, who's the caretaker of the Beis Hamikdash, will sell it. Now, what happens is someone can come and redeem it if he wants, but if the owner can come and redeem it, but if he doesn't, what happens by Yovel? Where does it go? So it gets divided amongst all the Kayanim. Because the purchaser from the Beis Hamikdash doesn't keep it. It goes and it gets spread out by the entry Kayanim of the Yovel. Because there's groups. So whichever group was entering into the Yovel, that was that group. They're the ones that are going to keep that field. It's going to return to them. So it goes like this. The Tanya, starting in Abraisa. Achuzasai says his inheritance. Ma Talmud Laimar. Why does it need to say that verse in the pasuk? Talmud Laimar. Ma Talmud Laimar. What's coming to teach us? Minayin. It's coming to teach us. From where do we know? The Sadeh Hayayse L'Kayanim B'Yovel, a field that was consecrated and then sold. And when the Yovel comes, it goes back to the Kayanim, the Jubilee, right? We go Echad Min HaKayanim, and one of the purchaser of it was actually a Kayan himself. What he would really like to do is, because he's a Kayan and he purchased it, he would like that at the Yovel, he's going to be the first one to acquire it. How do we know that we don't say that when the Yovel comes, when the Jubilee comes, that it leaves, that we don't say that instead of leaving this Kayan, that he was the one that purchased it, we should say that it just stays in his hand. How do we know that we don't say that? Vidinu, and we have enough logic to say that. It says, if it belonged to someone else had acquired, it would leave his hands and it would go into my hands because he's a Kayan and it gets spread out amongst all those Kayanim. If it was already mine, I purchased it, for sure I should get it. It should be like a consecrated field. For the Kayan, it should be his inheritance. Now, it says the word inheritance, achuza shaloi. The only thing that he really keeps is if he inherited from his father. The inzu shaloi, but this field is not really his. So rather, what happens? It leaves his hands and it goes to all the other Kayanim. Same thing is with a Kayan that steals from a convert, and the convert dies and he has to return it, and there's no relatives there to return it to. So we don't say that he keeps it, we say that it goes to all the Kayanim equally of that watch, all the Kayanim. How do you know that a Kayan that wants to bring his own carbon, let's say he has a donation sacrifice, or let's say he has a sin offering, and he doesn't want to give it to the people in charge of that week in the Beis Hamikdash, he wants to bring it himself. How do you know that he's allowed to go into the Beis Hamikdash during someone else's week and bring his own sacrifice? And by the way, he's allowed to bring it. Okay, he can come at any time he desires to bring a sacrifice for Sheris and serve. How do you know if when he does that, he gets to eat the meat of the sacrifice, doesn't split it with the other one, he gets to eat the meat, and he gets to keep the skin of the sacrifice? How do you know that? That a man, his holies is his, which is referring to the Kayan. He brings it, he keeps it. Kate said, how does this work? Let's say the Kayan that wants to bring his own sacrifice has a defect, he has a blemish. So he was not allowed to serve in the temple. He's allowed to eat the sacrifice, but he's not allowed to serve. So what he can do is, he has to hand it over to a Kayan that's during that watch, because he's not allowed to do it himself. He has to give it to a Kayan during that watch. But because he's allowed to eat it, so then he ends up eating it and taking the skin. He doesn't serve, he doesn't do the service, and he can't even appoint someone to do the service. He just hands it over to whoever's in charge. But he ends up keeping all the skin and also the eating the flesh, because that was something that he himself could do, because a kayan with a mum is allowed to eat from the sacrifice. We're on top of kafiyot. But if he was an elder or ill, that means what we're referring to here is someone that's so old that he can't actually eat it. He doesn't have teeth, I don't know. Or he's ill, he can't eat it. So then, he's able to give it to any kayan to serve, which is a very interesting thing Taisus points out, is that there is no retirement age for kayanim. There's only retirement age for Leviim. So even though he's old, he's allowed to do the service. Since he's allowed to do the service, he can give it to any other kayan that he wants to do the service. Gives it to any kayan that he wants. However, since he's not allowed to eat it, or since he's not able to eat it, so then who gets to keep the flesh and who gets to keep the skin? The people that are serving that week in the temple. If you can't do it yourself, you can't pass it on to anyone else. It's only what you can do yourself you can pass on to someone else. What's the case? What are we talking about? When he said that he's an elder or ill. If he's able to do the service, so then why do we say he has to give it to someone else and he also can't eat it? If he's able to do the service, so then he could keep it. Why do we say that it goes to the eating of it goes to the kayanim of that watch? And if he's not able to do the service, why do we say he can give it to any other kayan to do the service? He can't give it to any other kayan. He's too old to do it. If he can't do it himself, he can't give it to someone else. So, we're talking about that he is able to do it, but it would be very difficult for him to do it. So therefore, if he would do the service, even though it's very difficult for him to do it, so that would still be considered an acceptable service. If he's able to do it, he's able to make an agent to do it for him. But when it comes to eating, even if you're going to say the even if you'd say that he's going to eat it, it would be very difficult for him to eat. We say achila gasi. That's considered achila gasa. There's a concept when someone eats and he's already full, he's stuffed, and he just keeps eating. We say that that's not considered really eating.
It's
not considered eating. He's just hurting himself. I mean, remember they say eat or else it's going to go to waste. So one of my brothers would say, if I eat it right now, it's also going to go to waste. That's achila gasa. Achila gasa doesn't help anyone to eat when you're stuffed. So it's a waste if I eat it, a waste if I don't eat it. Okay, so that we're saying over here, it's not considered eating. But achila gasa lav klumim. Eating when he's full, there's nothing. Therefore, when it comes to the eating of it, where he's not able to eat it, so if he would eat it, it wouldn't even be considered eating. So then it has to go just to the people that were in charge of that week. He can't appoint a specific agent to do it. It goes under like the regular category of a sacrifice that's brought. Amar of Sheshes. Sheshes says, Im hayakayin tamei the carbon seabird. Now we're talking about an interesting case. We have a communal sacrifice. The way they decide who does the communal sacrifice is they would do a lottery, and whoever won the lottery would get to do the sacrifice. This fellow won the lottery, but the problem is he becomes tamei. How did he become tamei? I don't know. If someone died and he touched him, it became tamei. So what can he do now? He can give the service over to anyone, but he can't eat it. He can't eat it, so it gets eaten by the general public that was there for that week. The public, the kayanim that were serving that week, that was their turn. What's the case? If there are people in the temple there that week that are pure, we have a question over here. It said that he can appoint someone else to do the service because he won the lottery, so he can appoint someone. One second. You can only appoint someone else if you're able to do it yourself. He became impure. He can't do it himself. So how can you appoint someone else? It should just go to whoever's over there, someone else. So how is he able to appoint someone else if there are pure people there that could do it? And he's tamei. Maybe there's no one there that's pure. Everyone there is impure. The rule is if everyone's impure, then you could bring it even though you're impure. So then why do we give the food? Why do we give the eating to the people that are there that week? The rule is that even though they're allowed to do the sacrifice, but they don't eat from it. So what do you mean they eat from it? They're not allowed to eat from it. They're tummy. What we really mean is that we have people there that can do the service because they're tummy. Everyone's tummy. We have people that can't do the service that are tar, but they're bali mumen. They have a defect. So what we're going to do is like this. Because there's people there that can do the service, so we're going to say that because everyone is tamei, anyone that can serve is tamei. So those other tameim will do the service, or he can appoint someone else to do the service. If he's tamei, he could do it, so he can appoint someone else to do it. But when it comes to the eating, so the tameim aren't going to eat it. The bali mumen that are tahar will eat it. Okay. Gemara says now. Amar Ravashi. Ravashi says, talking about a Kayan Gadol that a close relative passed away, one of his close relatives, which are father, mother, sister, brother, son, daughter, wife, right? One of those relatives passed away. So the rule is that normally when a close relative passes away, the Kayan is not allowed to do the service in the temple. He's not allowed to do the service. The exception to that is the Kayan Gadol. He's allowed to serve even when he's in Einan, even when it's the first day before the mourning period. So it says like this. Ravashi says that if a Kohen Gadol is an Einan, he's allowed to appoint anyone to do it because he's allowed to do it himself. He can appoint anyone to do the service. However, when it comes to eating the food, the Kohen Gadol is not allowed to eat it. He's an Einan, so he can't appoint anyone else. So who's going to eat it? Only the people that were there that week, the regular Kohanim that are there. Avidasa Verilanchi Mishmar, it's called Anchi Mishmar, the people that are there that week. My Kamash Malan, we have a question. Why does Ravashi need to say this? Tanina, I know this from a Mishnah, from a Brisa. I have a much earlier source. Ravashi is the end of the Amaraic period, and we know it from a Tanaic source. It says Kohen Gadol Makravaina, and a Kohen Gadol is allowed to do the service even when he's an Einan. So therefore, if he can do it, he can make a shliach, which is exactly what Ravashi said. I don't need Ravashi to say it if I know it from 300 years earlier. But he's not allowed to eat, and he can't divide. It was interesting. You can't take the food now when they're dividing it and say, don't worry, I'm not eating it now. I'll eat it tonight, which he has the night to eat it, but he can't take a portion now because right now he can't eat it. He's not allowed to take but a portion. I'm saving it for later. Put it in a napkin and save it for later. He can't do that. Okay, but our question is on Ravashi. Why does Ravashi need to say this? My answers, I mean, I could have thought, only for him to do the service. I would have thought that the Kohen Gadol is allowed to do the service, special exemption for the Kohen Gadol, but not that he's allowed to make a shliach, but to appoint someone else to do it. You could have thought that he's not allowed to do Kamash Malan, and not only is he allowed to do it, he has that special dispensation. He's allowed to do the service, but he can even appoint someone else to do it. That's how powerful it is. Okay, now we have a new Mishnah. It says a Geisel es a ger. Someone stole from a convert. He swore to him, umes, and then the convert died. And there's no relatives. And he has stolen property. What does he do? He has to pay to the Kayanim in the temple the item that he stole. He has to add a fifth. And he brings a sacrifice called the asham. He brings that to the altar. Ha'asham elav, ha'asham hamushav lashem lakayen milvad el kippur mashiachaper bayalav. We say that if the person has no relatives to return the guilt, which means the stolen item, so it's returned to God, which means to the kayen. Besides for the sacrifice that atones for him. Okay. He was on his way and he dies. He's on his way to bring it to the Beis Hamikdash, and the thief dies. So now the money does not need to go to the Beis Hamikdash anymore. It can go to his own sons. The robber's children. It does not need to be returned anymore. It needs to go somewhere but it can go to his sons. Now, again, the convert has already died. He was the original owner. We just need to do some returning here. The returning would mean that it goes to the Kayanim. But what really happens is that he actually acquires it, except that the Torah says that he doesn't. But he would really acquire it immediately when the convert died, because whenever a convert dies and there's no relatives, so whoever takes those items, it belongs to him. Only thing is, he has a special halacha that Hashem took the stolen item, that the item that he stole, and he has to now return that to the kaidim. That's what we learned this morning. So over here, because now he dies, he doesn't. There's no mitzvah for the children to return it. So it just is Yinas and Labanav. What about Hashem? What about the guilt offering? Yirat she is tov. You wait till it gets a mum. The yimkar v'yipladava, then you sell it once it has a defect, because it's not a sacrifice anymore. And what do you do with this? You see, it's a guilt offering. The person that's supposed to bring the guilt offering isn't alive, so you don't bring a guilt offering after he dies. So you wait till it gets a blemish. You sell the sacrifice, and you bring a different sacrifice with it, a donation offering.
Because Hashem is involved, or because he was on his way to return it. We learned previously that the person, the descendants of the robber, inherited land, they were supposed to pay back. And the item didn't exist, they were supposed to pay back. This was, if the item didn't exist, because he was taking the money to the Kohanim and the Beis Hamikdash.
And we said that he has to make some sort of payment, right? Didn't we say that? He has to do some sort of payment, but he was able to actually get it back by doing some trick. Someone that stole from his father, and then he inherits it. So we said he has to pay it somehow, but he doesn't really need to pay it. He can get it back somehow. He can do a trick to get it back. He can borrow money, and then the creditor takes it away from them. It's supposed to just leave his possession. Okay, so now here he stole. The fact that he dies, it leaves his possession. It's now on the children's possession, so it's already left, right? So it's already left.
Yeah, I think this one is because he would be basically the heir, more similar to the case that we have in the morning.
Right. Okay. Nasana kesef lanchi mishmar. Let's say the money was already given to the kayanim that were there that week, umeis, and then the thief dies. So they say, "Oh, should have died before he gave it. Then the sons could have taken it."
The kayanim died?
No.
Okay.
The thief died.
Okay.
Now, if the thief would have died before he had given it, then his inheritors would take the money. But because the money was already given, so it says, it's too late. They can't get the money out of that. They say, "Oh, it wasn't. They didn't want to give it." It's too late. Whatever's given to the kayan, to him it should be. Okay. Now we're going to learn some interesting stuff. I don't know if you remember this from the Tainus. Remember, there were the names of the groups of the base of the Kayanim. There were family names. Remember this? It says the first group the name was Yehorav. Let's say he's returning the item. He gives the money to Yehorav, which is the first group. But Ashram, he gives the guilt offering Liyadaya, which is the second group. Yatsa, that's perfect. I mean, you could have given it all to the first group, but it's fine if you broke it up. You gave the money to him, and then afterwards you gave the sacrifice to the second group. But let's say you did it the opposite. Ashram Liyahirav, you gave the guilt offering to the first group, but you didn't return the money yet. The Kesef Liyadaya, you gave the money after you gave the guilt offering to the second group. So Imkiyama Asham, if the guilt offering is still around, Yakaru b'nei Yedaya, then it should get passed over to the second group, and they should be the ones to bring the guilt offering, because you can't bring the guilt offering if you still have the stolen goods in your possession. The imlai, and if you don't do that, then yachsiv yavi yashemacher. You're going to have to bring a guilt offering after you return the stolen good. You can return the stolen items before you bring the guilt offering. That's fine. You fulfill. But if you bring the guilt offering before you return the items, that doesn't work. If you return the principal payment, but he didn't return the fifth, that fifth doesn't affect the guilt offering being brought. That's a little penalty that's added on top. That's fine. He doesn't have to give that penalty before he brings the guilt offering. He only has to return the principal before he brings the guilt offering. We're going to go through a little Gemara here that's just discussing where we know the guilt offering. What's the word for the guilt offering in the text? We were saying that the word asham, which very often means the guilt offering, over here it's going to not mean the guilt offering. Over here it's going to mean the principal payment. That's what's going to come out. So we're going to look at the text and we're going to explain the words. Asham, when it says in the pasuk asham, which means it usually a guilt offering, over here it just means the guilt. Zekeren, that's the principal payment. Hamushav, which is returned, that's adding zechaimish. That's actually referring to the fifth that's added on top of the principal. He has to add a fifth penalty. Maybe the asham, the guilt offering means the ram, which that's what it normally means. Asham means the guilt offering. Ramainaf kamina. And what would the difference be? It's come to exclude what Rabba says. Let's say someone returned the stolen goods by night. You don't fulfill the obligation. You return it by day. Let's say you only returned half. You didn't fulfill the obligation. My time. You return it in half would mean that you returned it in two halves. Half now, half later. Right? Yeah. It says that the reason is because it's called an asham. We're saying that not to say this. It looks like we're not saying this. And a guilt offering can't be brought by night, and obviously you can't bring half of it. Right? After it's an animal, it can't bring half of it. So the Gemara now continues. It says, so therefore, when it says, besides for the ram of forgiveness, that comes to tell me that the asham is talking about the principle. It's not talking about the sacrifice. Now, I'm not sure what the Gemara is concluding here. Yeah, show me the English. I don't know if it's telling me yes or no. What is the reason? My timer. Basham Kaya Rahmana. What is the practical difference does it make if the term asham refers to the ram, returns to the principle? This interpretation would serve to preclude a dictum of Rava. Okay, now, having explained, no, Rava's dictum is based on the understanding of the term asham in this verse as referring to the principle amount of Rava. If it actually refers to the robber's offering, there's no basis for Rava's dictum. Oh, so in the end, what we're saying is we're accepting Rava. If we would accepting Rava. If we would have said differently, then we would be excluding Rava. If the asham meant the guilt offering, then we would have said that the actual returning of the funds has nothing to do with asham. But the fact that asham means the returning of the funds of the stolen goods, so then that tells me that we're accepting Rava, and you're not allowed to return those stolen goods by night or return them in two portions, half and half. Okay, next brisa. Tani idach, you have another brisa. Asham zekeren. When it says asham, it means the keren. Hamushav, that's returns. Zechaimish, that's referring to the fifth. Maybe the asham is referring to the fifth. What would the difference be? That would exclude what it says in the Mishnah. It's not that would tell me that you can bring the guilt offering even without bringing the fifth. It would be excluding that you can't bring the guilt offering without the fifth. Other Rabba, Chaimish Makiv, I would have said, since the Chaimish is called the Asham, I would say that the fifth is going to affect the atonement. So it says that he is supposed to bring the guilt and add a fifth. That teaches me that Asham is Keren. That Asham is the Keren, and therefore the Chaimish is not Ma'akiv. Okay, the Chaimish doesn't affect the validity of the guilt offering this brother. Tanidach, another brayso. Asham is a Keren. When it says guilt, that's referring to the principle. Hamushav, which is returned, Zachaimish, that's referring to the fifth. We guess we're talking about stolen goods from a convert. Maybe when it says Hamushav, it's not referring to the fifth, maybe it's referring to the double payment. But we're talking about someone that stole, not robbed, convert. When it says that he has to return the guilt at the beginning, and then he adds the fifth. That means we're talking about that something that's paid originally is what we're referring to, which is referring to Keren. That he pays the Keren, that's the Asham. Asham is the Keren. Okay, Gufa. Let's go back to analyze something that we said in passing. One of the things that we said before was Amar Rava, Gazal Ager Shechsir Balay Layatza, Siru Achatzain Layatza. That if someone returns the stolen goods by night, he doesn't fulfill his obligation. If he returns half, it also doesn't fulfill his obligation. My time, what's the reason for that? Asham Kaya Rachmana. The reason is because it's called a guilt offering, and just like a guilt offering can't be brought by night, a guilt offering, of course, can't be brought in two halves. So too, this stolen goods can't be returned by night, and also can't be brought in two halves. Amar Rava also says, very interesting. When you're returning the stolen goods, there has to be enough coins that every kohen that's in that group is going to get at least one pruta. My time, what's the reason for that? Every kohen needs to get at least a nickel, whatever's a pruta. I don't know how much a pruta is. So in other words, if it's being returned to the group of Yehorav or whatever, so every person from Yehorav has to be able to get a coin. Rabbi has a question. Let's say if he's going to return it this week, then Yehorav has too many people. He's not going to have a pruta for every person of Yehorav. We're not turning the page from Mishmeres Yedaya, but there would be enough for the second group. The second group is smaller. So now, what's the din? Why are you asking this question? What's the case? Are you saying that you're going to return it to Yedaya in the week of Yedaya a week later? So that would work perfectly. This is loy. That's not the case. Tzricha would. The reason why we had the question, I'm dividing up loy and tzricha. Usually say loy tzricha. No, it's not necessary. No, loy. That's not the case. Tzricha. It's necessary to have this question. Why does Rabbi have the question? Because we're talking about you're giving it to the second group in the week of the first group. What's it then? Should we say should we say that it's the wrong week? What you're doing is nothing. You're returning it to the wrong kayanim. Maybe since Yehorav, it's not fit to return to Yehorav because Yehorav is too big. So automatically it gets passed on to Yedaya. So even though it's the wrong week, but it belongs to them anyway. So maybe that should work. Take it. It leaves it as a question. Rav has another question. Let's say there's two people that stole from a convert. One person's returning, another person's returning. Could we say, you take this stolen goods and we'll take this stolen goods? We'll split it like that. Or do we have to split it evenly? Both of them, everyone gets a piece of everything. Okay? So that's Rav's question. Me Amrina, and do we say Hashem Kaya Rachmana that because the Torah calls it a guilt offering, Ma Hashem ain't Cholk and Hashem Kneged Hashem, just like when it comes to sacrifices. Every person needs to get a little piece of a sacrifice. We never say, you take this sacrifice, I'll take that sacrifice. No, you have to split it evenly across the board. So too, Af Gezel, ain't Cholk and Gezel, can I get the Gezel? Gezel again, can I get Gezel again? You can't split it. You take this one and I'll take that one. Right, Dilma? Or maybe. Gezel again, I know. This is only monetary value. There's no problem with splitting it like that. Other Pashte, the Gemara then answers Hashem Kai Rachmana that it's called a guilt offering, and therefore it has to be split evenly across the board. Rav Acha Brei the Rabba Masin Labehedi, Rav Acha Brei the Rabba, Rav Acha Rabba's son, taught this clearly, not as a question. He taught it, Amar Rava, Kainim ain't Falcon Gesel Agay, connected with Gesel Agay. The Kainim aren't allowed to divide the Gesel Agay. You take this stolen goods, and I'll take that stolen goods. They can't do that because my time was the reason Hashem Kai Rachmana. It's called by the Eberster. It's called a guilt offering. So we do a comparison to a guilt offering. Boy, Rava has a question. Kainim begesel agay. When Kainim get the stolen goods from the convert, Yorshin Have, are they considered like inheritors? Are they considered like they received the gift? Are they recipients of a gift or are they inheritors? What's the difference? A very interesting difference. Someone stole from the convert a loaf of bread, a whiskey, before Pesach. Now, after Pesach, it really has no value. But the halacha is that he's allowed to return it anyway. Remember? That was the halacha. You're allowed to return it and say, okay, I gave back what I took. So now, if we say, if we say that the kohen is an inheritor, he's just giving him what he's inheriting. Doesn't have to be something else. He steps into the place of the original person. Okay, he inherits it. But if we say that the recipients of a gift, he has to give him a gift, and he's not giving anything. Why? Because it's really just dirt. Just giving him dirt. If it has to be a recipient of a gift, the kind of recipients of a gift, then he can't return chametz, because chametz after Pesach is worthless. Rav Zera had a question, slightly different, but with the same concept. It says, even if you're going to say Makabli Matana Have, that they're recipients of a gift, we know clearly that he has to give a gift and he won't be able to give that chametz. You want to hear what our question was? Talking about he stole 10 animals from the convert. When the kohanim receive it, do they have to take a tithe from what they just received? If we say Yarshim Havid, if we say they're inheritors, then we say anyone that inherits something has to take a tithe. However, but perhaps maybe they're just recipients of a gift. We have a Mishnah. Anyone that receives a gift is exempt from taking a tithe. So are they inheritors? They have to take a tithe. Are they recipients of a gift? They don't have to take a tithe. So what's the halacha? Tashma, come and listen. Okay, now what we're going to do right now is we're going to go through the 24 gifts that kohanim get. Okay, we'll go through the list. And the main point of why we're quoting this is because it's called a gift. And one of them is going to be the stolen goods that are stolen from a convert, and it's still called a gift. The Gemara is going to conclude, see, it's a gift. Okay, but in order to get to there, we're just going to list out all of them and describe what they are. Tashma, 24 gifts of kohanim were given to Aaron and his sons. All of them were derived from a general, specific, and a generalization, right? Bris melach, and a covenant and salt, right? Remember, it says that it's a covenant of salt like an everlasting covenant. That's why it's called salt, because the salt doesn't spoil. Kolamakayim, and anyone that fulfills these gifts, Kilamakayim kala prat klal bris melach, it's as if he's fulfilling the whole Torah which is all the klal of pratz klal and the everlasting covenant. Anyone that violates them, kilo al klal pratz klal b'smel. If he's violating all of the generalizations, the specific generalizations, and the everlasting covenant. Elohim, these are they. Eser b'mikdash, 10 of them are in the temple. Daled b'Yushalayim, 4 of them are in the city of Jerusalem. Eser b'Gvulim, and 10 of them are in Israel. Temple, Jerusalem, and Israel. So 10, 4, and 10. It's a total of 24. Eser b'mikdash, what are the 10 that are in the temple? Chatas behema, they get to eat the flesh of the sin offering. Chatas oif, they get to eat the chatas oif. Asham vadai, which is there's 5 types of guilt of. Chatas is a sin offering. Asham is the guilt offering. Asham taloi is a guilt offering where he's not sure if he did the sin. Zivchei shalmit tzibur, the flesh from the communal offerings. Like shaman shalmit tzara, the oil that's in the purification process of the mitzvah. Meiser aimer, after the kaimetz is taken out of the aimer, which is the sacrifice that is brought on the second day of Pesach. So what's left over, they eat. Kind of meat. Stay alechem, 2 loaves of bread that are on Shavuos. Lechem upon him, the showbread, which is brought every Shabbos. Share menachos, and what's left over from the sacrifice, that's a total of 10. Above Yerushalayim, the 4 that are in Jerusalem. Abachaira, the firstborn. Habikurim, first fruits. Murim and Taida, what's elevated out of the Taida, which is the bread and probably was there a leg also of an animal? Because of a shaykh, the chest and the thigh, and also the 4 loaves of bread. That's the El Nazir and the ram of the Nazir. Virus kachim and the skins of the sacrifices. All of that is used or they're able to have benefit and enjoy it in Jerusalem. And there's 10 of them that are just in the entire Israel. Truma, right, which is the first gift. Trumas Meiser is what the Levi gives to the Kayan. Bechala is the piece of dough. Reish Sagay, which 1/24 to 1/48 of a batch. Reish Sagay is the first sharings of wool. Matanes, what comes out of every animal that's slaughtered. Pidyon Aben, 5 coins, right? Pidyon Pet Kamar, the sheep that's given to redeem the donkey. Stei Achuza is the field that's not redeemed, that goes to the Kayanim and by Yovel. Stei Charamim, any field that's consecrated, because Lager, and also what's stolen from the convert. Well, Kakari Mias Matana. We see what's called a gift. Shmamina, we see from this, Makable Matanas Havi Shmamina. We see that the Kayanim are considered recipients of a gift, they're not considered inheritors. If the money is given to the Anshe Mishmar. So what happened over here is let me see in your Gemara what it says right after this. It says Hulu. I want to know what's in that Hulu. If he gave money to the members of the priestly watch and then died before the sacrifice and guilt offering, the heirs cannot remove the money from the priest's possession. Right? Okay. Take a look at this. Amar Abaya. Amar Abaya. Shmamina. We see from this Kesef Mechaper Mechza that the return of the money is half the atonement. If you like Mechaper, because if it didn't atone anything, and the person died without giving the guilt offering, Habe Amina, Mahadili Yarshin, I would say that the money should go back to the inheritors. But remember, the inheritors want to get the money because if he would have died earlier, they would have kept the money. So what they want to do is, look, he didn't get to give the guilt offering anyway, so let me get the money back. Say no, because he has half an atonement. We don't say that there's no atonement. Sometimes there's a thing, it atones in increments. Right. So over here we're saying it atones in increments because the money is returned. Okay, you're half atoned. You bring the guilt offering. Okay, you're fully atoned. So he's getting a partial atonement. So if you don't say that it's a partial atonement, then they would come in and they would say, "My time, he never would have given it if he would have known that he's not going to get a full atonement. He's not going to get any atonement." Right? The Gemara says, 1 second. Can you really do that and say that he never intended to give it if he wouldn't have had any atonement? 1 second. If that's the case, let's say there's a sin offering where the owner dies. Now the rule is if the owner died from the sin offering, we say that it has to not just get a mum. We have to say that it has to. You just let it die. There's nothing you can do with it. 1 second. You should just let it go back to chulin because if he would have known that he would have died, then he never would have intended to make it a chatas. Can you really do that and say that had he had known, he never would have done that, and then you take it out? Retroactive? Amri, they say 1 second. We can't bring a proof from that because that's halach l'moshe misinai that it gets put to death. The Gemara has another question. It should go out. Over there, usually by an ashram, what you do is you have to wait till it gets a mum. You say, why should I have to get a mum? He only separated, he only designated it, thinking that he was going to be alive to bring it. But because he wasn't alive to bring it, so he never had that in mind. The Gemara says, that's also halach l'moshe misinai. Any situation where a sin offering is put to death, if it's a guilt offering, it's put into a pen to wait till it gets a mum. If that's the case, take a look at this. I have a woman that got married. Her husband died, and there's no children. She has to now do yibum with her brother, with his brother. She has to marry his brother. Problem is, he has boils. He has boils. He has an illness. She doesn't want to be married to him. So, but she can say, 1 second. I never would have accepted the wedding money from my husband if I would have known that I would have ended up by this guy. So therefore, I cancel the whole wedding. According to the original husband, retroactive. He's dead. But if you would say that had I had known that this is retroactively, just take the whole thing off. Says that we say Hassam. That's not a proof. Because an ansadi, where we could testify, the Menach Naicha La B'Chaltahu, Reish Lakish. We know that she wanted to be married, and we know that she actually would even be married to this guy as well, because Reish Lakish says, Tav L'Mesav Tandu Meil Mesav Armela. She would rather be married to anyone than to be alone. Okay, I think we should leave it over here. Let's leave it over here. We'll wanted to finish, but okay, finish tomorrow. That's just Hashem. Right. Okay.
Thank you. Laila Tov.
One second, Eliezer. Very nice. I didn't see. Okay. Very nice. Okay. Have a good night.
Thank you. Same to you.
Thank you, Rabbi.